We've just discussed the supply of labor today in this model, and now we're turning to the demand for consumption goods today. Now we know from the simple consumption savings model that we looked at where people were endowed with their income. If income rises today, holding the real interest rate fixed, then the demand for consumption today is going to rise. And in particular, what they're going to want to do is they'll rise, but by less than the increase in income. Why is that? Because they're going to want to save some of this increase in income so they can consume in the future. So we can then write the demand for consumption today as a function of the real interest rate and wealth. And of course, a higher real interest rate is going to it's going to raise the relative price of consumption today and therefore reduce the demand for consumption today, whereas higher wealth will increase the demand for consumption today as consumers, because consumption today and in the future are both normal goods. So we can define this thing that's called the marginal propensity to consume, which is just telling us that if income goes up by $1, how much does consumption rise by? And in general, this marginal propensity to consume is going to be somewhere between 0 and 1. That's what I was saying up here, that if income goes up by $1, consumption today will go up by something less than $1, say 80 cents. And that means that the marginal propensity to consume is 0.8. And out of that dollar, you then consume 80 cents and you save 20 cents. So we can then plot this, and I want to emphasize that the graph looks different than what we've plotted before. On the horizontal axis, we still have income today, but the difference is that instead of having the real interest rate up here on the vertical axis, this is the demand for current consumption. So then the demand function, which I've drawn as this blue line, and as I said, is just a function of the real interest rate and wealth, is we can look at a slope of this demand function, and that's going to tell us, so the slope is going to be the change in C over the change in Y. Well, that's just exactly the marginal propensity to consume. And because of the way I've drawn this particular demand function, at higher levels of income, the marginal propensity to consume is smaller because the slope is getting flatter. Now, we can ask, well, what happens to this demand curve if the real interest rate goes up? So the real interest rate is going to go up. That means the price of goods today has risen relative to the price of goods in the future. Because we have demand up here on the vertical axis, what this tells us is that for any given level of income, you're now going to want to consume less today. And that's because the price of goods today has increased. And then the last thing that we can do when talking about the demand for consumption goods today is ask, what happens if we get an increase in wealth? Well, as we said, if you get an increase in wealth, then what you're going to want to do is, for any given level of income today, you're going to want to consume more. So this demand curve is going to shift up.